The night was quiet when Emma returned home. The soft creak of the wooden stairs, greeting her as she tried not to wake anyone, but she knew he was still awake. Her stepfather Mark, sitting in the living room, with a book in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other. The dim golden light from the lamp casting shadows across his face, making him look both strong and thoughtful. She hesitated for a moment at the doorway, watching him, feeling a strange tension she couldn't explain. And when his eyes finally lifted to meet hers, she felt her breath catch. He smiled in that calm, confident way of his, and asked why she was still up so late. She shrugged, pretending it didn't matter. But inside, her chest, her heart was racing. She came closer, pretending she only wanted to grab something from the table. But the air between them shifted. Heavier now, almost charged. She could smell the warmth of his cologne mixed with the faint burn of whiskey, and it made her dizzy. He put the book down and leaned back, his gaze lingering on her just a little longer than usual. Not inappropriate, but not fatherly either. More curious, more drawn in, as though he was fighting the same strange pull she felt. She sat down across from him, trying to act casual. Yet the silence between them was filled with unspoken thoughts, each second stretching longer than it should. When he asked if she wanted a sip of his drink, she laughed nervously and said she wasn't supposed to. But he slid the glass toward her anyway, their fingers brushing for the briefest moment, sending a shiver through her. She took a small taste, the liquid burning down her throat, and when she looked at him again, his eyes had darkened with something she couldn't quite name. His voice dropped lower, softer, when he told her she should be in bed, but the way he said it made her feel anything but sleepy. Instead, it stirred something deeper inside her. She leaned forward, her voice quieter now, almost teasing, asking if he would carry her to bed like he used to when she was younger. But the words hung between them with an entirely new meaning. His jaw tightened, and for a moment it seemed like he might get up and leave. But instead, he leaned forward too, his face only inches from hers, the heat of his breath brushing her lips, his hand resting on the table, close enough for her to reach if she dared. The silence was suffocating and yet intoxicating, every heartbeat louder, every second filled with anticipation, until the night itself seemed to bend around them, urging them closer. Emma's lips parted slightly, as if she might say something, but nothing came. Only the quickened rhythm of her breathing gave her away. Mark's gaze dropped to her mouth, lingering there just a fraction too long, and when his eyes lifted back to hers, she saw the same battle she felt inside herself, that dangerous edge between what was allowed and what both of them secretly craved. His hand moved slowly across the table, not touching her yet, but close enough that the warmth of his skin radiated into hers, pulling her in like gravity. She trembled, not from fear, but from the electric tension that pressed harder with every heartbeat. He finally stood, his height towering over her, the shadow of his frame stretching across the dimly lit room. She tilted her head back to look at him, her chest rising and falling quickly, her lips still parted in silent invitation. He took the glass from her hand and set it aside, his fingers brushing over hers just a little too long, and she felt it everywhere, in her stomach, in her thighs, in the way her breath refused to steady. He leaned down slightly, his voice low and deep, telling her she should really get some sleep. But his hand had already come to rest on the back of her chair, his body caging her in, his sense surrounding her completely. Emma shifted, unable to sit still under his gaze. She whispered something, maybe his name, maybe just a sound. She wasn't even sure, but it was enough because he leaned closer. Close, enough that his lips hovered over her cheek, brushing lightly, but not quite kissing. The ghost of a touch that made her whole body ache for more. Her hands lifted instinctively, resting on his chest. Feeling the steady strength of his heartbeat, he froze for a moment, as though giving her the chance to pull away, but she didn't. Her fingers only pressed firmer against him. Her eyes, pleading without words. That was the moment it shifted. The last thread of restraint snapping as he tilted his head and his lips finally caught hers. The kiss wasn't soft. It was hungry, pent up, like years of tension breaking free in a single breath. She gasped against his mouth, but melted into it, her body pressing against his, her hands sliding upward to his shoulders, clutching at him as though she'd been waiting for this longer than she'd realized. His hand slid from the chair to her waist, pulling her closer, and she let out a sound between a sigh and a moan. The fire between them no longer hidden, but burning openly, consuming everything. The room seemed to disappear around them. The ticking clock, the quiet of the house, none of it mattered. Only the heat of his mouth, the strength of his arms, the way her body responded instantly, eagerly, every touch sending shivers down her spine. Her legs brushed against his as she stood, pressed against him fully now, their kiss deepening, heavier, his hand trailing lower along her back, pulling her into him with a need neither of them could deny anymore. She felt dizzy, overwhelmed, yet completely alive, every nerve on fire, every moment sharper than anything she had known before. His hands now traced her sides, sliding under the thin fabric of her nightshirt. Feeling the warmth of her skin with every touch, Emma gasped softly, arching toward him, her lips pressing harder against his, as though she couldn't get close enough. His mouth moved to her neck, leaving soft, heated kisses that made her shiver uncontrollably, her fingers tangled in his hair, tugging gently, urging him closer more. She felt the pull of his body against hers, the strength in his arms, holding her firmly yet tenderly, and the air around them seemed to thrum with their desire, every heartbeat echoing in the room like a drum. He paused briefly, looking into her eyes, and she saw the same fire she felt in, herself reflected back at her. No hesitation left, only hunger. He tilted his head, lips brushing hers again, this time deeper, more demanding, his hands moving with a boldness that made her knees weak. She moaned into him, a sound that was both surprise and invitation, and she pressed herself fully against him, her body responding before her mind could catch up. Every brush of skin, sending shivers racing through her. Her hands roamed over his chest, feeling the taut muscles under his shirt, pulling at him, teasing, urging him closer, and he responded, sliding his hands up her back, fingers entwining with the straps of her nightshirt, lifting slightly, exposing more skin to his touch, and she gasped again, tilting her head back to give him more access, the heat between them rising fast, almost unbearable, their breaths mingling, ragged, urgent. The kiss, breaking only briefly for soft whispers, her name on, his lips her name on her own, the tension snapping tighter with every heartbeat. He leaned her gently back against the couch, pressing her down as he held her, lips never leaving hers, hands exploring, teasing, discovering, and she arched into every touch, moaning softly yet insistently, her body demanding more, urging him, inviting, daring, and the world outside. The room ceased to exist, leaving only two bodies pressed together, connected in an intensity that had been simmering for too long, finally erupting in a flood of passion and desire. Her body trembled under his touch, every brush of his fingers against her skin, sending jolts of fire through her. His lips, roaming from hers down to her neck and collarbone, leaving a trail of heat that made her gasp and arch toward him, her hands clutching at his shoulders as if holding on for dear life, yet craving more, her pulse racing with a mixture of fear and longing, every nerve alive with sensation, his hands sliding lower along her back, pressing her closer, molding their bodies together, the heat between them building unbearably, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps, Emma's tangled in his hair, tugging him closer as he moved with deliberate hunger, lips claiming hers again and again, teeth grazing softly, tongue tracing a slow, teasing rhythm, every kiss leaving her aching for more, her hips shifting instinctively, pressing against him, the friction sending sparks up her spine. She moaned softly into his mouth, a sound of surrender, desire, and impatience, urging him to take what had been simmering for far too long. His hands cupped her waist, sliding lower, fingertips brushing against the sensitive curve of her hips. The fabric of her clothing, no longer a barrier, but a teasing whisper of what lay beneath. He tilted her back slightly, pressing his body flush against hers, his lips moving lower, trailing across her chest, and she gasped loudly, shivering under him, her hands roaming down his back, pulling him tighter, deeper, as if she could fuse them together in that instant. Her soft whimpers echoing in, blending with his low, urgent groans, their bodies moving in tandem. A rhythm of need and desire, fast and fevered, each touch, each brush of skin, each whispered name escalating the fire between them, their world narrowing to the heat, the touch, the shared pulse of passion that could no longer be denied. The air was thick, electric, and every heartbeat, every motion carried them closer to a breaking point. His lips found hers again in a fierce, claiming kiss, hands gliding with intent over every curve, every contour, and she shivered violently, moaning his name, pressing her body fully against him, urging, inviting, daring him to take them beyond the edge. And in that moment, every restraint, every rule, every hesitation shattered, leaving only raw, consuming desire, driving them both toward an inevitable, unstoppable climax. Their bodies moved together with a frantic, consuming rhythm, each touch, each kiss, each moan pushing them closer to the edge, her nails digging lightly into his back as he pressed himself fully against her, every nerve alike, every sensation magnified, her chest heaving, her lips parted in gasps of pleasure, his hands roaming without hesitation, claiming, holding, guiding her, the heat between them unbearable, yet impossible to resist. She arched into him, letting herself be carried, completely by the passion, building inside them both, their breaths tangled, hearts racing in perfect sync, every movement sharper, faster, until the tension became unbearable, a crescendo of longing and desire that neither could hold back, and then release a shattering wave of pleasure that rolled through her, leaving her trembling and gasping, and he followed, his groan low, guttural, body shuddering as he collapsed against her, holding her tightly, their sweat-slicked bodies pressed together, the room spinning with the intensity of what had just happened. For a long moment, they stayed like that, tangled, breathless, spent, letting the silence wrap around them, only the sound of their uneven breathing filling the space. And when she finally opened her eyes, she saw not shame, not regret, but a burning truth reflected in his gaze, an acknowledgement that what had started as a fleeting, forbidden spark had grown into an unstoppable, undeniable connection, one that would forever change the way they saw each other, forever binding them with the memory of a night that neither would ever forget. Subscribe to the channel too.